Hey Optimancers, Chris here. For the past several weeks I've been going over Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, the optional class features, the feats, the spells, and the subclasses. In today's video I'm going to be going over the Fathomless Patron for Warlocks. In my next video I'll be discussing the Genie Patron. I've already gone over the optional class features for Warlocks, including the new Talisman Pact and the new Invocations in my last video, so if you haven't checked that out yet, I'm going to post a link in the video description. If you'd like to support what I do on this channel, I have a Patreon that I'm going to link in the video description as well. Patrons get rewards such as early released ad-free versions of these videos, and my top level patrons join me for a one-shot D&D session each month. And they will also get individually recognized in these videos. So today, I would like to recognize Airhead, Awesome Face, Ben Potts, Black, Bloody Nine, CJ, Casburn, Christian Wyndham, and Christopher Gutsy. Thank you for your continued support. Okay, let's talk about the Fathomless Warlock. So if you figured that one Warlock Patron that involved Tentacles wasn't enough, I've got great news for you. The Great Old One and the Fathomless Patrons can have a Tentacle off. In fact, I've already played a Warlock whose Patron was a Kraken, and the Great Old One worked just fine. However, if you want to stick to the flavor text, now we have a specific option for that concept. The Fathomless Warlock provides a pact with the deep water, where it's dark, cold, and terrible things lurk. Perhaps your patron is a Kraken, or perhaps a powerful water elemental, a coven of sea hags, or some other deep sea horror. First, let's look at the expanded spell list we get. As with all Warlocks, these spells are not automatically known, but some new options for known spells that are normally not available on the base Warlock spell list. So this list is pretty sweet actually. Thunderwave gives us a good area of effect option at low levels. Most Warlocks are limited to Arms of Hadar, which isn't very good, and Thunderwave is a perfectly solid option at the first tier of play if we want an area of effect blast option. Silence is a pretty decent second level spell and can be devastating on enemy casters, especially if your party has a way to ensure they can't escape the effect. Now, personally I'm not a big fan of Lightning Bolt as a blast, at least compared to Fireball, which is available to some casters at this level, but it's not a terrible spell. Sleet Storm is a very good and very large area of effect control option. This uses your concentration, but it's often worth that concentration as a way to interrupt enemy spell concentration and divide enemies. Our fourth level options, honestly, I could do without. However, depending on the campaign, if we're going to be on a ship or something, I guess I could see Control Water as a decent selection. At 5th level, we get a very nice option with Bigby's Hand, which is one of the better 5th level spells in the game. If blasting is what we want to do, I guess there's Cone of Cold, though personally I wouldn't recommend it. If you want to blast with your 5th level spell option, I would suggest taking Synaptic Static instead, and then you're going to not just have better range, but you're also going to get a nice rider on there as well, and target a weaker saving throw. So we're going to get two subclass features at 1st level. The first is Tentacle of the Deeps. This feature is probably the most iconic for this subclass. It's going to allow you to summon a spectral tentacle using your bonus action. You can do this up to 60 feet away, and you can use your bonus action, including on the turn you summoned it, to make a melee spell attack against a creature within 10 feet of it. It does 1d8 cold damage on a hit, and there's a 10-foot speed reduction imposed as well. At 10th level, the damage scales to 2d8. On your turn, you can move the tentacle 30 feet as part of the bonus action you use to attack with it. So you can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus for each long rest. That means when we first start with this class at 1st level, I wouldn't count on being able to use the tentacle in all our combats, though eventually at higher levels we probably will. So the first thing I'm going to say that if the plan is to use this to increase your damage, you're actually not going to notice much of a damage increase from this at low levels compared to a simple Hex spell. And at level 5 it's actually going to add less damage than Hex. So as a straight damage option, it's not delivering all that much considering it's using up our bonus action, though I do note it doesn't use concentration as Hex does. Now, As a movement reducer, it's a bit more interesting, especially if we have the option to take Lance of Lethargy as an invocation, which would be a different source. So these two effects would stack if we hit a creature with both of them, potentially reducing enemy movement by 20 feet, which is pretty significant. Add in a repelling blast and we could use this as a way to improve our control of enemy movement. It's not a dramatic difference, but these little things do add up. Now it's tempting to compare this to Spiritual Weapon, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Like Spiritual Weapon, this uses a bonus action each turn, it doesn't use our concentration, it makes a melee spell attack, and we need to move around the effect to our next target. Now this will actually do a fair bit less damage than Spiritual Weapon because we aren't adding our ability modifier to the damage. But on the upside, it does move 50% faster, and the movement speed of Spiritual Weapon is a problem. And it has that 10-foot reach on top of that, so it is going to make things easier to move from target to target. The big advantages of this, though, are, number one, it doesn't use a second level spell slot. And second, we can use it right from first level, while a cleric isn't going to have access to Spiritual Weapon until third level. The real question, though, is whether this is worth doing instead of Hex, as both use our bonus action, so it's really one or the other. And I think it really depends on what you want to focus on. If doing damage is your only priority, Hex is going to serve you better. However, using this frees up your concentration if you want to be doing things other than damage. And there is also the movement penalty, so a Fathomless Warlock isn't the king of damage for Warlocks, but can maintain decent damage while engaging in other things that Hex might interfere with, and give you improved control of the battlefield on top of that. So overall, I think this is okay, but we need to be aware what this can and can't do. This can free up our concentration from a Hex spell without sacrificing all that damage that we normally would in order to free up that pack slot for a different spell casting. This can improve our control of the battlefield to a small degree, but that's it. But that's not nothing, so overall I think this is an okay ability, as long as you're aware of what it does and what it does not do. Second feature we get at first level is a swim speed of 40 feet and the ability to breathe underwater. Both these abilities are obviously circumstantial, and obviously there are campaigns where this might come up a lot, and others where it may not come up at all. Now with this patron, swimming and breathing underwater are pretty much conceptually required. I totally understand why they're giving it. That brings us to 6th level, and we get 2 features. Actually, it's probably 3 features, since Oceanic Soul is really 2 different features. So the first thing we're going to get with Oceanic Soul is a resistance to cold damage. I'll always take a resistance to damage, and cold is, well, in the middle of the pack. You're going to get more use out of this than psychic damage resistance, but less than poison resistance, for example. The second thing you'll get with Oceanic Soul is that while you're fully submerged, any other creature fully submerged can understand your speech and vice versa. So this is basically Aquaman. And we know how amazing Aquaman's superpower is. But like with Aquaman, it really depends. If our campaign is taking place underwater, then this is a permanent tongue spell, which is amazing. In a standard campaign, though, this isn't going to come up very much unless you can convince the creature you're trying to communicate with to join you in the pool. The second feature at 6th level is Guardian Coil. This allows you to use your reaction in combination with your Tentacle of the Deeps feature to protect you and your allies. When a creature within 10 feet of the tentacle takes damage, and this could be you can use your reaction to reduce the damage by a d8. When you reach 10th level, you can reduce the damage by 2d8 instead, so it's scaling at the same point that the damage of the tentacle is scaling. Now this isn't a whole lot of damage, especially it's using your reaction. And depending on the battlefield, there's actually a pretty decent chance you and your allies might not be within 10 feet of the tentacle. So this, I think, is a pretty small defensive boost. Though, if I haven't used my reaction, and I'm within 10 feet of the tentacle, or an ally is, and I can use this ability to reduce some of the damage they would have otherwise taken, might as well use it, even if it's a d8. So to sum up, at 6th level, we're really getting 3 features. Resistance to cold, a limited tongue spell, and a limited reaction defense. Individually, none of these are amazing, but you put all three of them together, I'd say 6th level is decent for the Fathomless Warlock. That brings us to 10th level and Grasping Tentacles. So we gain the Evert's Black Tentacle spell as a free spell known, but in addition we can cast it for free once per long rest, and our concentration can't be broken from taking damage, and we gain temporary hit points equal to our Warlock level when we cast a spell, whether we're casting it for free or using a pack slot. I should also point out that it's a spell that works well with other movement controlling effects, like reduced movement speed or repelling blast, which we will have access to both of, for example. So overall, I consider this a very good ability, and probably the standout for the Fathomless Patron. Level 10, I guess, is the point where Fathomless out-tentacles the Great Old One, whose Warlocks that are casting plain old unenhanced Everts using pack slots like a bunch of chumps. Then we finish up the subclass with Fathomless Plunge at 14th level. This feature provides you a mass teleport usable once per short or long rest. The teleport can include yourself and up to 5 willing creatures you can see, and teleports you to a body of water you've seen pond size or larger within a mile. So the use of this that jumps to me right away is using it as a quick escape. In some ways this is very good. The 30-foot range is actually quite generous compared to other quick escape options, and those options tend to use a higher level spell, while this is usable after every rest without using a spell slot at all. The two limitations here are that the creatures must be willing, which is normally not a problem when an entire party wants a quick escape, except in the case where one of our allies is unconscious. And in that case, the rules actually don't say if an unconscious creature can be willing, and I think it's up for debate, but one way or the other, it's up to your DM. The second and more significant limitation is the body of water you've seen within a mile. The size requirement of a pond or larger means you aren't just spilling some water onto the ground either. Also, what's pond size or larger? Does a river count? Does a creek count? A pond is likely going to be wider than either of those, though a river or creek may have more water area in total. So again, this is going to be up to your DM. There's going to be some campaign dependent value here as well. Maybe your campaign is based closely around a home base that's on a lake or an ocean shore, in which case this would be amazing for both utility and for escape. But in other campaigns, maybe there's no sources of water nearby, in which case this is completely wasted. So it really depends. And that's the Fathomless Warlock. The one theme that comes over and over again with this subclass is, it depends. And with this subclass, it really does. I'm not sure I can recommend this patron for just any campaign. Then again, if your DM is going to be running a campaign that takes place on the high seas, or maybe they're going to be running you through the adventures in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, in those cases I think this is an excellent choice. Maybe the best Warlock choice, period. So, is Fathomless a good subclass? My answer has to be, it depends. And so, if you are considering this Warlock subclass, maybe see if your DM can give you some information on the campaign. Quite often campaigns will have player guides at the beginning that will tell you a little bit about the setting. These kinds of things might give you a clue as to whether this is a patron that is maybe worth selecting. So hopefully that is useful to you. And in my next video I'm going to cover a subclass that's going to be good regardless of the campaign, the Genie Pact. I'll explain why in my next video, so I hope you'll join me for that. And until then, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everyone. Talk to you soon.